Hello, I'm Winnie Yu from Tion's Fine Teas. Continuing with our series on tea steeping training. Today we're featuring Kung Fu style tea making of pu'er teas. We're going to be using a Yixing teapot. Okay, this is a Yixing teapot made with purple sand clay, not to be confused with terracotta or other clays. This is a specialty clay that exists only in a certain region in China called Yixing. Okay, now this clay is full of minerals and acts to aid in the process of tea steeping. Okay, originally made as wine pots, today they are useful for making tea. They are unglazed, okay, which means that each teapot is basically dedicated to one kind of tea because the clay will absorb the essence of the tea, the flavors of the tea, and over time that teapot will smell and taste like the tea. So don't mix different teas together, and that's why people collect these pots. They have a different teapot for every tea. Now, of course, you can use similar types of teas for one pot. What I'm doing here is just pouring some hot water to heat up the pot, and I like to do it a couple of times. This helps to relax and open up the clay, get it ready for action. Okay, now the tea that we're featuring today is called a pu'er. A pu'er is not an oolong tea, not a black tea, and not a green tea. Pu'er tea is its own category, and it's a fermented type of tea. Originally made similar to a green tea, and then just fermented and aged over time. This is also the oldest style of tea ever made, and this particular one here is compressed, just like they did 300 BC. Why did they compress the teas? Well, it was for transportation purposes. They were exporting this tea all over the country, traveling out of China through the Silk Road and the Old Horse Road into the Middle East, Russia, and other countries. Okay, so what I want to do here is bring a little hot water into the tea leaves. Now, because they're tightly compressed, they're very different from the other teas. You want to make sure that you give it a really good rinse to open up the leaves. And again, I do everything twice, just like I heated up the pot, to get the leaves nice and open. You notice that a really good teapot here can pour extremely well without sputter, and that's one of the things you want to check when you're buying these teapots. And the lid closes very, very tightly. Okay, but for me the most important thing is being able to pour very well. And again, I'm going to use the discarded hot water to warm up my cups, not to waste water. You want to use a very high temperature water for this tea because it's compressed and fermented. Now, pu'er comes from the region of Yunnan, where a lot of indigenous cultures thrive. And typically, the trees that are in the wild are a couple thousand years old. The cultivars today are not quite that old, but this is the oldest form of tea making, tea production, and also species and varietal of tea. Now, the next process is useful for any tea making involving a Yixing teapot. What I'm going to do is pour hot water over the teapot and bathe it. Now, these are porous and unglazed teapots, and this action will allow the teapot to stay very, very hot, almost like a convection oven. So it's hot inside and outside, and we're keeping the pot very warm by this procedure. And also because we're not really able to tell how long it takes to steep the tea. Usually it takes about 2 minutes for a compressed type of pu'er. You want to pour hot water over its body maybe 5 times. Now, for a good Yixing teapot, the body of the teapot would dry very quickly after you pour hot water over it. And watch it dry. And each time after it dries, you pour more hot water. It's also a very fun process to impress your friends, right? What are they doing with this teapot? Okay, now I have one more pour to go and I'm ready to dispense the tea. So I want to get my teacups ready. Now to get an even cup of tea, you want to make sure that you're pouring the tea evenly over the cups. So the last pour, I've bathed my teapot 5 times. With oolongs, maybe 3 times would be adequate. But with this type of pour, you need to do it 5 times. And I'm going to very quickly pour the tea over the cups and make it a very even pour. Now this is a relatively greenish, not very old kind of pour. Some of the older pours are going to turn out to be very dark in color, almost soy sauce color if they're over 15 years old. This is a relatively young pour yet. It hasn't been aged very long. So the color of the liquid is still pretty light. I'm going to taste a lot of woodiness, earthiness, a bit of sunshine and fire. Puerh is known for its distinguishing earthy taste, kind of like mushrooms. You have to like mushrooms to like this tea. Enjoy.